Imagine this. A guest overstays their booking, and now you're faced with the nightmare of removing them. It can turn your hosting dreams into a hosting and legal nightmare.
We're gonna go over warning signs that we've learned after years in the business and tips to keep squatters out of your home in the first place.
Hi, I'm Sarah Karakayan.
And I'm Annette Grant. And together we are
Thanks for visiting.
We've been hosting for well over a decade, welcomed tens of thousands of guests, and earned thousands of 5-star reviews.
Our portfolio continues to bring in over 1.5 million year over year, and supported not only by the industry's leading brands, but also some of the biggest media outlets.
And we're here to help you with your furnished rental.
What is a squatter situation?
A squatter is someone who occupies a property with no legal claim to it. So in any sort of real estate, there is a potential for squatting. So it can be in a property, it can be on land, and it can also happen with short-term rentals. So a squatter in a short-term rental situation would be someone with a reservation that then refuses to leave.
At the end of their reservation.
At the end of their reservation, and is not extending it.
Let's just get out there that neither Annette or me or I are attorneys, okay? And so if you have a squatter, this is actually before you have a squatter situation, this video should prompt you to ask someone who can provide counsel to you, okay? Because every state is different.
Absolutely.
And if you're not in the United States watching this, like your situation is different, and Annette and I could not possibly know what that would look like for you.
So this is just overall guidance.
Guidance.
Not the law.
Correct.
Asterisk, 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 asterisk.
And what I can share with you is, it is one thing for a guest who has been in a property in our jurisdiction for a couple days or even a week and removing them versus someone who's been there for 28 days or more and then they're squatting. Like, those two different scenarios have very different implications legally, okay? So if we're really talking about a short-term rental means less than 28 days in most areas, okay? So again, you need to find out what that means to you. And if it's less than 28 days, the process to remove them could look a lot less daunting, although still not fun. So that's why it's a nightmare, because either way, you have to involve law enforcement, whether that's a police officer or the courts, an attorney. Like, none of this is fun.
And what if you have guests that are getting ready to check in?
Be familiar with the rules and laws in your market. In many jurisdictions, we already kind of mentioned this, stays over 28 days then have a different set of rules. So we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, but right now I wanna focus on if they haven't stayed for 28 days, I want you to already know in your area what you can do. Can you call a police department? And if you did, do you have to prove that you have a short-term rental license? Like, what would you need in order to get the legal help that you need in that moment from law enforcement? Is what I want you to be prepared. I don't want this to happen to you and then you panic. I don't know what to do. Create a policy now. I can tell you that in ours, we can call the police and we can share with them that what person booked a stay via a reservation, but that it was less than 28 days and they are now trespassing. They have no legal grounds to be in our property, and would they please remove them? So, and how did I find that out? From talking to our license section. So when we get the license for short-term rental, I ask them, who can I talk to, or do you know what happens in this case? And then you can also call the local precinct to your area and say, hey, I'm a new host, I'm legal, I have a license. I wanna know if this were to happen, what is the policy that I would need to adhere to get your help with moving the guest.
TFE pro tip.
We want you to always go to your property immediately following a guest checkout. I know it can be tempting if you don't have another reservation for 3, 4 days, 7 days. You're like, oh, I want to take a break. I don't want to go and clean the same day. You really need to get in your property right when that guest is supposed to check out so you can confirm that they have checked out. You don't want to assume that they've checked out, not go to the property for a few days and they're still there. So that's why we recommend to everybody, not just for squatter situations, but for any sort of insurance claim too, the sooner you get eyes on your property, you step foot in your property, you can review it after a guest checks out, the better off you're gonna be in all scenarios.
Let's be clear, this is rare, but it can happen. And so if you feel like you walk in after the guest checks out and their stuff is still there, or a few of their items are still there, close the door and message them either on the OTA, so whether they booked via Airbnb or Vrbo, or text them, something that shows it can be time-stamped and it's going directly to them, and share with them, remind them of the rules and what they've agreed to by booking with you, and see, say, it's my understanding that you'll be out in the next 15 minutes, 30 minutes.
It was an accidental late checkout.
Right, which actually does
It does happen, yeah.
more often than not. And I would say 99.99% of the time, the guest is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I thought it was a 11 a.m. checkout.
But this is where, when you're communicating with your guest, always letting them know that you're going to be there right after their checkout to start cleaning, because you don't want to say, "Oh, we're not going back till next week." You can kind of get quote unquote sloppy with your communication sometimes, and maybe the guest can see a loophole of like, "Oh, like I can probably stay a couple extra days." So just make sure that you have that dialed in and you're going to your property after each and every day. What to do immediately. So Sarah just gave you the advice of, if for some reason you go to do the turnover and you potentially they missed the checkout time, or maybe they were delayed at brunch. That happens. Most guests are going to get back with you immediately, apologize, and come get their things. All right? Scenario 2 is they are not responding to you. They are not giving you any inclination that they have any intentions of checking out. This is where you want to send a message that is concise, but to the point, that you've been in the property, checkout time was 11 a.m., you see that they have not left. Can they explain why? And if they need to vacate immediately, or you're going to call the police. You need to be, if the first message, we find 9 times out of 10, like the guest is apologetic and all over it, okay? But you can start to sniff this out if there isn't a response. There's many things left in the home. This is where you want to, quote unquote, just really put your foot down and say, like, this is serious. This was your checkout time by our reservation, and there are next steps that need to be taken. The reason we want that message to also be short and concise is less for them to read. They know you're serious, and this is where it is imperative that all communication, actually all the time, is documented via the OTAs, like via the Airbnb text or email. You want to have, like Sarah said, time-stamped communication that is brief and to the point. And so if your first inclination might be to pick up the phone and call them, but we want you to start getting this messaging documented, that you have proof. So if you do have to call law enforcement, you can pull up their reservation that's clearly communicated, the agreement and what their checkout time is, and that you corresponded with them at, let's say, 11:02, said they had some things, nothing. Then, like the second message, it's just going to be really important as you start to involve other folks in this, that you have that documented timestamps and the exact communication that you used with them.
Avoid residency situations. It can be very exciting to get a longer booking on Airbnb or Vrbo, but here's the thing. I've seen so many hosts get excited to accept it without having some sort of process in place to get that guest, who then technically becomes a tenant, to sign a rental agreement. Okay, so if you are open to guests staying longer than 28 days or whatever it is, wherever you live, I would absolutely do not skip this. Do not have ChatGPT be your attorney. Do not have YouTube to be your attorney. Go talk to an attorney. Get a rental agreement drafted up that specifically talks about becoming a resident, or have tenancy in your property, and make sure you understand what they need to agree to. So if they break that contract, you then know what to do if they do stay beyond their lease, because they're signing a lease agreement, okay? And in your area, it might depend what you do next. If you find out they haven't left yet, you go to, again, turn it over. It doesn't matter if they're staying for 30 days, but now it's different. Now you can't just call the cops and have them leave, because the cops are going to say, well, do they have an active lease in place, or do they have a lease in place? And you might say, yes, but they were here for a month, but now the lease is over. Your law enforcement might say, well, there's an eviction process that you have to go through, and we cannot be a part of that process at this time. So find out what that means to you. You might have to post that they're being evicted first, and then you have to go through an eviction attorney to help you take those next steps, and it can be lengthy. So I would say, first and foremost, if you're open to getting 28, 30-day stays beyond, have that rental agreement dialed in. Make sure it addresses what would happen if the guest or the resident would go over their agreed checkout date, their agreed end of lease, and that you know what you then need to do so you can act fast. You're not then trying to scramble and find an eviction attorney. You're not trying to find out what to do next, that you can legally have them removed from your property.
And don't shy away from the longer booking or having the rental agreement thinking that the guest won't want to stay because they have to sign something. That is not true. That is not true at all. Any guest that is going to be in your home for that long, they completely understand. We haven't had anybody. We do midterm stays. We do 30-day plus stays where they have to sign this agreement, and they have no qualms with it. A guest that wants to be in your home and is on the up and up has no problem signing additional documentation. They understand the seriousness of them, staying in your home that long. So please don't shy away or get nervous for asking for this rental agreement. Warning signs of potential squatters.
Okay, warning sign. Doesn't mean they are going to become squatters, but just be on edge. If you have a short stay guest who keeps extending their stay, and I'm talking like 2-3 times, because here's the deal. Why aren't they booking for what they need for? They may not have the funds. They could be up to some interesting business that you don't want to be a part of. And then what happens if, yes, they keep extending the reservation, but then they get to 28 days, 30 days, they've been in your property for 28 to 30 days. Okay, so at that point, you might still have a problem removing them, because depending on where you live, whether there was a lease in place or not, they could still be considered a squatter, and you might have to evict them. You might have to go in the eviction process versus law enforcement process, or whatever your process is in your area.
This is a slippery slope where all of a sudden you're like, oh, they were great guests, but then all of a sudden you're like, wait, they've been here for 30 days and you didn't even realize it.
So this has happened to us, and when we get to like the 4th time they extend their stay, we actually tell them no. We actually say, unfortunately, you can say whatever you want, whether you have another booking or we have routine maintenance, whatever you feel comfortable saying. But I would, at that point, I would have them find either go to a hotel, like whatever they would need to take care of it. They could be having incredible intentions, like fine intentions. I just don't want it happening in my
you
property.
Can clear your books, know that they checked out and they need to check back in. And they shouldn't have a problem with that.
Either. Having them move their stuff out and they can move it back in. But I would just be cautious if that's something that's happening to you.
Another red flag is a local guest wanting to book an extended stay with no explanation. We have some amazing, amazing local guests that need our properties for time periods, and they're very clear about that. Maybe they're having a home renovation done. Maybe it is an insurance claim. Maybe it's someone coming to town for a job assignment. But they are always very clear as to the why of their extended reservation. So if someone local is just in need of a place to stay, that is a big red flag to us. And those local reservations are ones that we do turn down.
I do have it in this is a very important tip.
Yes, sorry, before turning them down.
You never want to appear as if you are being selective with your rules. Okay, yes. So either you allow local residents via this process or you don't. Okay, so, and I would put that in your house rules. I would put it on, if you've got a website, I would put it on your website. I would put it in your listing. I would put it everywhere you can, so you cannot be accused of being discriminatory.
Yeah. And nor should you be.
Don't be discriminatory, correct. But if you have it, unfortunately, we don't accept local guests as outlined on our terms and condition page on our website, or as outlined in our house rules. And if they have a problem with it, you can say, we totally understand. Unfortunately, there are situations that we can't put ourselves in, but you're welcome to find another host who doesn't have these rules, or stay at this hotel.
That's the other thing too. I want to take a breath there and a pause, because I know when we get these requests, we take them, if you're anything like Sarah and I, we take them so seriously. We're like, oh my gosh, where are they going to stay? When we're responding, it always feels like the thing that we hate to say the most is no to anybody.
Yeah.
So we totally empathize with you that this is not an easy thing to tell someone no. However, there are so many other places that would be better served for that stay. So just always remember that there are other options for these guests. And also, if you know of those options, we actually offer them up to them too. If we know great extended stays, or we know of another host that focuses on midterm stays, we also can guide them in that direction. So we're not saying that these are easy decisions to make, that it's easy to tell a guest no, but be prepared if you could, again, give them some other resources potentially that they could go to find something that's more fitting for an extended stay.
And if saying no isn't something you want to do, then that's fine. Okay, you do accept local requests, but what do they need to do in order to get an approved reservation? Maybe they need to, I know, and I don't want to get into midterm rentals here too much, that's for another video, but maybe they have to send you the job assignment, contract, or maybe you need to have, if they're getting their floors done and you have like an icky feeling, maybe they have to send the estimate, or the company that's doing it, and you have to confirm that that's actually happening. I mean, you have to figure out what works for you, but you don't have to say yes, you don't have to say no, but you should know what to do before it happens and know what the consequences are if things don't go the way
I'm going
you
to
plan.
share another, it's not necessarily a red flag, but it is a hard no for us. We have so many people that if they're coming for an extended stay, maybe they want to see the property ahead of time. And it's just like, nope, this is what it is. This is what we offer. We're just not having anyone in our homes that, we don't know ahead. It's a huge safety issue to do a tour or anything like that. So this is our listing. This is what you get. And again, we know you get excited about these type of things because I've wanted to do it so many times of like, oh, but it's local and their family's going to stay here and I want to show it. It's just like, no, I need to have a reservation. I need to have documentation of them because it's very easy to all of a sudden have a stranger in your home that, no one even knows that you're doing this walkthrough. So we want you to be safe there. Just say no.
Questionable reviews. Okay, this one takes a little bit of practice, or like you got to be hosting for a minute to really understand this, but maybe they have terrible reviews. And so if they have terrible reviews, really like think about that. You can set rules that they have to be well reviewed for them to get an accepted reservation from you. So first and foremost. Or maybe they have 10 reviews, they're all 5 stars, but they're from local hosts who aren't great hosts. Like they're not attentive, or they're in this just for the money, or they haven't been to their property in weeks and weeks and weeks, and like the weeds are growing up, and it's like you just know they like are clogging the pipes for you to get good reservations.
And we know, like in our town, we know our usual suspects.
Oh, we know who they are.
Because they leave the same exact review for
like automated.
Each and every guest.
Yeah.
So please, like that's something where we've seen hosts get caught on this a lot. They're like, oh, well, they had 10 5-star reviews. But when we go in after and we look at those 10 5-star reviews, they are from, let's call them absentee hosts that aren't local, that aren't checking on the properties, and it's the same. Every review is great guest, great guest, great guest. And we're like, did you really even look at the property after? So that's where we want to help you. And this is even for short terms. This is a tip that you can use on all stays. But we're very dialed in our town, and we know that there are some hosts that have very different review system than what we have. So we want to offer that to you to read those reviews.
And this video isn't about midterm stays. So for those of you out there who are like thinking like, well, why aren't they mentioning this or that? Like I'll mention, if it's going to be 20 days or more, like we do the background check, we do the credit check, like we do all those things. So as well as getting them to sign that lease. So the whole staying over 28 days is a very involved process because we don't want to be faced with an eviction because there are so many things financially and legally that you're burdened with. But before you even get to that point, or if you're interested in having those longer stays, that's why we recommend you have an attorney that you can consult with.
Just a quick recap here. Educate yourself, stay vigilant with your reservations, make sure you're checking in on your property after those checkouts, and be on the lookout for those red flags. One thing we didn't mention in this whole entire video is sometimes you got to go with your gut too, all right? Trust your gut in certain instances also, but act quickly. So being quick and documenting things are really going to save you in this potential situation.
And you can only be quick if you're prepared. So good for you for watching this video. And if you think this will never happen to me, it probably won't.
Let's hope so.
It can't hurt to, when this video is over, go and take notes, rewatch it, take some notes, and just have a plan together. So if you have to act quickly, like Annette said, you're prepared to.
TFB pro tip.
All right, so let's say this does happen. How nice would it be if you could call your insurance company and file a claim to help you with this squatter situation, whether it's in legal fees or lost revenue. Now, not all insurance is built the same. So not to go off on a crazy tangent here, but homeowners or policy will not work, and a regular landlord policy won't work if you also do short-term stays. So if you have a short-term rental insurance policy, call them up or email them and ask them, hey, can I take stays of 28 days or longer according to my policy? And if I do and I were to get a squatter, or if I don't and I get someone who stays beyond their reservation and they're not a squatter but they won't leave, will you help with any of those legal fees? Because if they will, and there are insurance companies that offer something.
Yes.
So call them, find out, know ahead.
Let us know in the comments if you have any tips that maybe we missed, or if you've dealt with this unfortunate situation and you have some proactive advice for anyone that might encounter this. Please let us know in the comments. We're always here to help all hosts just up-level their hosting biz and not have this type of stuff happen to them.
And now that you have a bit of an idea of what to do if this were to happen to you, we want you to also be prepared to avoid parties in your short-term rentals. So check out that video, our 11 top tips for avoiding parties in your Airbnb. And with that, I am Sarah Caracan.
I'm Annette Grant, and together we are
Thanks for visiting.